the Freak Show, Wild 94.1, the Bay's Party Station. We have more tickets for our Tampa Bay Talent Search coming up, so you can see Tori Kelly live at the Hard Rock. That's with our sponsors. Of course, Dean Guitars just stepped in. Paragon Music, of course, is an exclusive local dealer for that. Also, Metro PCS is riding with us, and, of course, the Hard Rock Cafe, biggest one in the country. Tampa Limo and Car, 1-800-ASK-GARY, and Capitol Records with that big unbreakable smile from our Tori Kelly. She's going to be here in the Bay singing with us on stage and helping us find the next singer-songwriter. Now we have our man Felix Vega in the building. He's our legal analyst. What's up, man?
Good morning. How are you?
Look at you over there hip-hop dancing in your tie.
I know.
Like ready for court and over there doing a nay-nay. Now, hey, we do appreciate you coming in because every time we have a legal argument, we always feel you have to be in the room to be the referee. Okay,
I'm here for you.
And you sent us homework last night. Like, we don't get homework from people. And we got like 7 pages of homework last night. They're like, hey, man, Felix sent homework. You check your notes. Now, the deal is everybody knows the University of Cincinnati case where the officer Ray Tensling shot Samuel DuBose in a routine traffic stop, supposedly. And we could talk about that. Are we periscoping? Are you about to make this weird?
All right.
At Wild 94.1.
Oh, God. So that means everybody around the world's watching?
Everybody.
Jeez,
Your friends in Libya are tuned in.
I know, because every time we go on Periscope, somebody from Libya checks in. It freaks me out. All right, so hi, Periscope. You can follow us on Twitter at our Wild 94.1 account that way as well. But we felt we should have this conversation because there was a previous videotape from 2014 that he made another routine stop, and I just want to play this audio for you so you can get a hint of why it made at least it made me nervous.
All right, my name is Demetrius, and that's all you get. So you better pull up everything you need from that.
Nope, I need your name, your date of birth.
Demetrius.
I need your date of birth.
I'm not giving you that.
Okay, if you refuse to identify yourself, we have a charge.
What's the charge? What's the charge?
Refusing to
What's your
identify.
charge? What's your charge? I just told you my name.
Why are you
What's the
interrupting
charge?
me? You asked me a question.
What's the charge?
Step out of the car.
What's the charge?
Step out of the car.
For what?
Step out of
What
the
am I
car.
stepping out the car for?
Because I asked you to.
What am I stepping out for?
Step out of the car.
What am I
Refusing
stepping out
to identify
for?
yourself. Step out of the
I
car.
just told you who I was.
Step out of the car.
I just told you who I was.
God, boy, you can't even go home on a
Right.
on a Sunday
I'm trying to go
night.
to an ATM and get some money out, and y'all pull me over for some bull.
Step out of the car.
What am I stepping out of the car for?
Because I asked you to. Step out of the car.
What am I stepping out of the car for?
All right, so
What am I stepping out
Felix, I got to ask you, if I was in this same situation, I wouldn't be combative like this guy, but being a passenger in the car, am I required to show ID?
That's the argument, because I told Davi, I'm like, there's no way we could be in the car if I'm handing over my license and registration and he's over there trying to start the revolution. Like, oh, no, I don't have to tell you nothing, officer. Like, I mean, that's the law. If an officer asks you what's your name.
Right, and this is the situation, just hearing that audio puts in so much context because you're talking about so many different things. What is the officer's, what's going through his mind at that point?
Right.
Why is this guy not giving his last name? Why is this guy refusing to answer a question? What is the purpose in not just giving him driver's license, registration, proof of insurance?
Why is he not working with me? Something's got to be wrong.
Right, and so you see this heightened level because of their training. That's what they're thinking, like, what else is this guy hiding? Mm-hmm. What is going on in this situation? And so it immediately, their training kicks in, and that's why they're wondering, why are you not giving me your last name? Why are you not giving me your information?
And attitude.
And attitude. And so...
Even the exchange was tense.
Right, and it was tense right off the bat. And
right.
So even though this officer later on committed the shooting with Samuel DuBose, you can see where that situation escalates very quickly just by not answering a few simple questions. You could have given him his last name, run his information, let him go on his way. And you saw another incident I pointed out to you guys from Indiana last year. You saw a family in a car, 2 young children, a boyfriend and girlfriend, and they refused to roll down their windows. Why are you stopping us? All the questions started. Then you see the boyfriend who's in the passenger seat when the video picks up. That's about 15 minutes into that traffic stop. And you see the boyfriend reaching down into a bag looking for something. She calls 911's on the phone. I don't know why the officers are acting like this. There's 20 minutes of video before that a lot of people didn't see.
Okay,
and
but
so,
all of this back and forth is making the officer more tense.
Exactly.
And it's making the person more frustrated. But just as the basic law, even if we were just talking about Hillsborough County or the state of Florida, if an officer pulls me over and says, what's your name?
Answer them.
I think I should answer them.
Right. And
if you're talking to people out there, you should answer them. As your counsel, you would say, give them an answer.
Right. And it's very simple because being in your car is very different than being stopped on the street. If there's different levels of encounters. So if you get stopped on the street, the officer comes up to you, you're not doing anything wrong, you're free to walk away. When you're in a vehicle, it's a very different situation because you're bound by the laws of the state of Florida. So if they pull you all over for a traffic stop, say it could be, a busted taillight, you don't have your license plate affixed properly. They run your tag and they find out that you have a suspended license. They drive up next to you, verify your ID, they pull you over.
So there's many reasons that they're pulling you over for, or at least that they can.
Right.
They believe they can have the right to pull you over. So when they do, you have to do certain courtesies.
Right. Driver's license, proof of insurance, your registration, you're required to, give them by law. The passenger situation that Davi was referring to, that's a separate issue. So you're essentially separating out the different people that are the different actors in the car. Now, if Davi starts acting very squirrely in the car and he's reaching under a seat, reaching behind the seat. As a passenger, that could heighten my suspicion. And then now I want to know what's your information. So now
what if I, as the driver, look over and say, "Hey, Davi, man, quit moving around. You're making this man nervous." "I'm sorry, officer. I don't know this dude like that. Right. Here's my license and registration. You might need to unbuckle your taser for this fool." Like if I'm trying to calm down, if I'm trying to control the car, is the car my responsibility or are they the officer's responsibility too?
It's depends on what happens.
And the reason I ask you this, and Felix, we'll give you a Twitter so everybody knows how to get a hold of you because I know they're going to start asking questions.
Yeah, it's at Felix Vega News, all one word.
All right, at Felix Vega News. Because my question is, the dude who's popping off right now is the passenger in the car.
That was the passenger?
I didn't even realize it until the other dude started calling the office. What? Like he called the Cincinnati police.
So his friend?
He was the driver. This first guy is the antagonist, and he's the passenger in the car.
Dude.
So, and in that situation, that's when the officer has a heightened concern, and they can start investigating the passenger if they believe it's a personal safety issue with them. And why is he interfering in the traffic stop? Why is he involving himself in the traffic stop? It's, again, escalating a situation that otherwise, if he just sat there, didn't say anything, you're not involved in it, you're not doing anything wrong, you would have gotten your ticket, y'all would have, gone on your merry way home, just like he was talking about.
At what point, as a passenger or as a citizen just walking down the street, am I allowed to sit there and not say anything as opposed to required to show identification?
If you're, and again, in your car versus on the street, two separate instances. If an officer comes up to you, what's called a consensual encounter, I can ask you for your identification. You're free to leave. If I don't suspect you of doing anything, I don't have reasonable suspicion to believe you're committing a crime or anything like that, you're free to leave. I cannot go after you as an officer. If you're in the vehicle, if they might run you for wants or warrants. There's different reasons why they could ask for your information. An officer may not, care about the passenger if you're sitting there quietly. And there's no reason to suspect that you're doing anything wrong. There's contraband in the car. There's possibly a firearm in the car, drugs in the car. It's a simple, and I hate to use the term routine traffic stop because there's nothing routine about any traffic stop. Every single one.
An officer is tense when he walks up because he's like, "I want to go home," and you're like, "I want to go home." But y'all both got the same mission in play. You both want to go home, so you should be on like-minded terms. It seems.
Yeah, Felix, a point of contention that Orlando and I were having, were back to this same situation about the traffic stop. I'm adamant about recording everything. As soon as those lights,
I'm like, put that camera down, dude. That officer gonna get angry.
As soon as those lights come up behind me, I'm pulling out my phone and I'm recording the whole incident. How do you feel about that? And what's the legal ramifications of it?
You can record any sort of police activity that's happening in a public space.
Oh, jeez.
And so that's, and we've seen it already.
They got body cams, man. I'll leave it to their tape. I don't want Davi up sticking the camera in this man's face and making him squirrely. I'm like, listen.
That's the other great debate. It's like I just heard this on the news this morning while I was up early. I was watching CNN, and we're having a debate about body cams because there's a trial going on involving a police officer that shot and killed someone in another traffic stop that I didn't even know was going on until this morning. And the whole issue was about the body cams versus dash cams. And one of the analysts said, well, the body cam should be released immediately.
Right.
And that, we're
no editing, no funny business.
Everyone's afraid that there's editing, that there's all these allegations that, the police are going to edit it. The police are going to do this to it. The state attorneys are going to edit it. They're going to destroy it. They're going to alter it somehow. All of the body cam debate has to do with when that body camera video is recorded, it's uploaded into a server, and most of the times it's going into a cloud where we don't have access to it. It's not editable. It goes in, it gets stored. That's it. You can pull it out, and you can't even download it. Like, they send you a link to it as your defense attorney. And so that's the great myth about body cameras. And I've researched this. I've done numerous stories about it all across the country. That was the big problem. Is like, where do we put the body camera video? Is it editable?
Available.
And is
So
it available?
he's thinking that he should be taping it because he can't get direct access to that. He wants his own source.
He wants his own
I'm thinking
source.
that I just really would like to have a conversation with the officer. Like, hey, officer, here's my stuff. Run it. I ain't done anything wrong. You going to hand it back to me. We could leave instead of getting all crazy. But here's the deal. We wanted to be able to take calls too. So what we'll do is take this break and give you the number 888-429-0941 because I want you guys to be able to ask Felix direct questions and stuff because realistically, the young audience and really the adult audience, our whole audience of the Bay Area, whether it's Tampa, whether it's St. Pete, whether it's Orlando folks or out down in B-Town, whoever is listening, when you get pulled over by an officer, I'd rather you have the marching orders from us saying, hey man, here's what's legal, here's what's straight, here's what's probably gonna get you home quicker. Here's just some advice on how we can keep everybody out of the hot water. So let's do this, reset, come back. We'll play some more of this thing too because they do something else on this stop that I want to know how you would see it would being perceived, Felix. So stay here. Felix Vega, our legal analyst, is in here with the freaks. It's 8:39. Freak Show, Wild 94.1, the Bay's party station. I usually take a break and I can get some water or something. Dolly got the Periscope going and interviewing us. We can't even calm down. The show just kept going. How did they do the Periscope again?
They go to @Wild941 on our Twitter, and then that's how they get connected to the
there's
Periscope.
a link right there.
All right, you can get in. We got Felix, and Felix is on social networking at Felix Vega News. He is our legal analyst. This is the tape of the guy arguing with the officer in 2014. It's just starting to get tense. Check this out, and then we'll hit your calls.
It's up to you. Can we get a supervisor?
You don't
here?
even have a reason for what y'all pulled us over for.
Yeah, can we get a...
That's not a reason.
I'm sorry, you don't
It's not a
understand
reason.
that reason.
It's not a reason.
It is a reason.
It's not a reason. His airbag will be deployed if he's in an accident.
Sir.
Can I
It's not
request a
reason.
supervisor?
Step out of the car.
Where's
Can I
your
just talk to
supervisor?
you?
Get your supervisor.
Step out of the
Get
car.
Can I
your
request a supervisor?
I'm not stepping out of the car.
Can we not get a supervisor?
I'm not stepping out of the car. Did you hear that guy? I mean, if officer says step out of the car, don't you got to get out?
And that's not necessarily true
Just
about the airbags.
don't give me the LA law version. Just tell me, if you're driving the car and the officer say get out the car, you getting out?
You should cooperate to a certain degree. I mean, obviously, but I think more importantly, what you hear him say, that's not a reason why you can pull me over. That's not a reason. He says that, he's saying that he knows what the law is.
Right.
And so that's a dangerous, slippery slope to go down because what you think the law is, or you think, why did I get pulled over? I shouldn't have gotten pulled over. This is
does a
BS.
cop have to justify it to you by your legal knowledge? You could just be a truck driver. You don't have legal knowledge.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is this is what happens so often is that people think they know what the law is, and more with social media and people talking about these things and having these conversations, they think every situation is uniform and that nothing is separate and distinct. And so in that situation, when you're challenging an officer saying that's not a reason to pull me over, you don't know that. You don't have a law degree. You're not trained in that. Maybe you are a lawyer like me. Maybe I could say that, or one of my friends could say that. But an ordinary citizen, that's not the time to challenge whether or not it was a lawful stop. There's a time and a place for that. It's called traffic court.
Yeah.
It's called, misdemeanor court, whatever the case may be.
That's where the argument happens. Don't do the argument on the streets. And that's what my dad gave me advice. And because I asked, when Davi said this, I said, when you have a kid, you're going to change your mind. Because when you tell your kid to go out in the streets, you're going to be like, hey, man, you pull out your camera and you fight the rights. You're going to say, hey, you listen to that officer. Because my dad always told me, he's like, listen, the wrong time to expound on what you think you know, because you took business law from Attorney Ravenel at FAM, just because you think you know the law, the wrong time to make that argument is on a dark street corner at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly. And this was an interesting thing in this article that came out yesterday from the New Yorker magazine. They interviewed Officer Darren Wilson, and the reporter went and interviewed Michael Brown's, talking about what happened in Ferguson, interviewed Michael Brown's father. Here's what Michael Brown's father had to say after the shooting. Quote, we had a conversation about just following orders. He said, after you thought that you were being disrespected, get a name and a badge number so your parent can reach out to the police department and file a complaint. Most important was a simple directive, quote unquote, obey. That's from Michael Brown's father.
Yeah, just
And that's
don't
a
try and
year-
fight your own battle out there. Let us fight it because
Just
we're your
respecting
parent.
authority in general.
Let's
I
hit
think
some of the
is
calls
important.
here. 888-429-0941 and taking your text at the Hungry Howie's Pizza text line. We got Crystal on the line with a question for Felix. How you doing, Crystal?
Hey, Crystal.
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How are you? Hi, Felix.
What's your question?
My question, well, is actually just what you were speaking of. So I was just asking, if you've done nothing wrong, if your car is completely legit, your tag is good, you have insurance, you have your license, and they ask you to get out of the car, is it necessary for you to get out of the car when all you really need or what you may be able to receive is just a simple traffic ticket? Why would you have to get out of the car?
Right, and that's where the legal debate comes in, is whether or not he orders you out of the car. Does he have reasonable suspicion to suspect that you are doing something else to order you out of the car? In the long run, it's a situational basis. If the officer's, being aggressive, it's always better to kind of just go along with the situation, not aggravate the situation.
And take notes.
And take notes. After it's all over with, decompress. Call the police department if you feel that you were wronged, or if something, rises out of the situation, either you become arrested, that's basis for a motion to suppress. Why did they illegally take you out of the vehicle? What justification did they have?
That's smart. So listen to them because it can actually help you if you've done nothing wrong.
Right, because if whatever the officer tells you, you then, for example, if you are pulled over, they take you out of the car, they have no basis to order you out of the car, and then later they find contraband in your car or something else, happens that ends up in a criminal charge, you can challenge that in a motion to suppress or a motion to dismiss.
Yeah.
There are legal avenues for that.
Okay.
And so it's better not, and again, if the police officer's being aggressive, we're not talking about that issue. I'm talking from a completely legal angle. It's why put yourself in a situation of peril, especially like you said, you have children in the car. You have to be aware of all those situational things, just like the officer has to be aware of his surroundings as well.
I just can't see myself arguing with an officer for 20 minutes.
No.
Like that 20 minutes of tape where it escalated into something crazy and then the dude start reaching in the bag. Like if I'm an officer, I'm nervous now. I'm like, why are you fighting me? I pulled you over for a reason.
And that could have, and that situation in Indiana, that could have been a 1 to 5 minute traffic stop if they simply produced their ID. And instead they challenged the officers. That went on for 20 minutes. And what did it end up happening? They ended up having to break out the window.
Yep.
Because they had a legitimate
And
concern
pull
for
the
their safety.
dude out of the car.
Tased him, pulled him out of the car. And you hear the mother tell the 14-year-old, to Davi's point, are you recording?
Yeah, the 14-year-old is in the car watching the baby daddy or whoever get yanked out of the car and everything. It's insane. Let's see. Melissa's on the line. Melissa, what's your question for Felix?
Hey, Melissa.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
My husband, his motorcycle broke down on the side of the road, and he was in the process of wheeling it off the sidewalk and to the bank that was right there, and a cop pulled him over and was talking to him, but it was insisting to give him all his information, and my husband wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just moving his bike because it had broke down. He didn't feel comfortable, but he did because the cop was being very aggressive and insistent. Is that right? Could he have technically refused to give him his information?
Is it like a military state where a cop could walk up any point and say, hey, what's going on over here? And you're like, nothing going on. I'm just moving my bike off here because it broke down. Well, let me see your identification. Does that feel weird?
I could absolutely would feel weird. And, if the cop just doesn't say like, hey, it's like, do you need help with your bike? Do you need me to call AAA or something like that? But then you start asking, if your driver's
like
license.
To jump straight to your license seems a little abrupt.
Right. And again, I'm not judging.
Not you saying that it's the bar, but just like in your opinion.
And this is not judging, any law enforcement officers. Like I said, every situation is individual. And sounds like in, her case, her husband, complied and, gave over his information, and that was the end of it. But, you don't know what's going through an officer's mind. It depends on what neighborhood he was in. Where did he get pulled over at? What was the time of day? He could have actually thought, well, maybe this bike may be stolen. Those are different things that go with the calculus that goes through a police officer's mind. It's not just, okay, well, this guy's, pulling his bike off to the side of the road because his bike broke down. There's a lot of different scenarios that go through everyone's head, just like you as a driver thinking, oh, good, this cop is here to help me, move my bike off to the side of the road, and then it turns into something else.
Yeah, because now he's asking you questions and you get offended. And if you're the angry dude like Davi, we all going to jail. we all going to jail. Wait, now here's more of the tape to what this guy. I mean, this is still going on. We are like, this is just a minute now, and we keep stopping it. But this is still, the argument's still going, and nobody has acquiesced. No ID, no last name, no getting out of the car. We ain't following orders.
Supervisor?
We're asking for your supervisor.
It doesn't matter. Just
We're asking for your supervisor.
Can I ask for his supervisor when he pulls me over? If I haven't given him any information, I haven't told you anything, we angry, we tense, and I'm like, you know what? Damn it, send me your supervisor.
You can ask whatever you want. Whether or not they send for a sergeant
Right.
or a lieutenant.
That's up to them.
That's up to them.
So we're still basically at a
They're
stalemate.
at a standstill, and that's up to their, they have a standard operating procedures. All departments have that as to when a supervisor gets called out, how they handle the situation. Is it better to involve a supervisor? But at this point, you have a very simple situation that could have been solved.
I think somebody need to get tased. I personally think if all this going on, I'm sitting over on the other side like, officer, you just need to light his ass up. Apparently he's not going to tell you nothing. I tell you his last name is Jenkins. All right. Now light his ass up, officer, so we can go home.
He's getting
And
everybody
that's
in trouble.
all Orlando's opinion.
That is all Orlando's opinion. Light his ass up so we can get home. I got to go and watch The Power.
All right, so I have a question. So I'm in a car and it gets pulled over, and then for some reason or another, the police officer says that he wants to bring a canine to smell my car.
Oh, we Jay-Z.
Okay, so is it true that me sitting there waiting for the canine is me consenting to the search? Aren't you supposed to say, am I being detained? Yes or no, and then go on your merry way?
And that's a whole separate line of case law that deals just with that one very specific issue. So in a canine situation, either they have to suspect that you have illegal narcotics in your car, and they can't go any longer, detain you any longer than it would to normally write a traffic citation. In other words, go back to their car, fill out the citation, and the canine officer shows up, does the sniff of the car, and then you see where it goes from there. Again, very situational, but the case law is very tight in favor of the motorist in terms of how long they can detain you. So if you get into a situation where 15 minutes goes by, 20 minutes goes by, and you're still waiting for, a canine, again, that's a situation for the courts to handle.
I feel like I'm in custody. I can't leave. Mean, that's the big argument.
And so, but those are very specific issues that deal with, if they smell the odor of marijuana, and this is what people, I don't know if all your listeners, understand this, but if they smell the odor of marijuana coming out of your vehicle when you roll down the window, that gives them probable cause to then take you out of the car and search your vehicle, period.
Let's see.
That's all they need.
On the Hungry Howie's Pizza text line, we got hits coming in. It says, so many bikes are stolen and thieves are out there. I don't see that as an issue for him asking, when you're wheeling a bike off from somewhere. This is what somebody else just wrote.
Excellent
somebody else just
observation.
said, this is not Nazi America. We do still have rights. All this do what you're told stuff. This is not a military state. I don't like it. So somebody else says, so kiss ass until they get done bullying you or killing you. I once seen a man shot for reaching for his license that the cop told him to reach for. It's like, so this is somebody who's a specific case that you can tell they have a tint, their history with them, they have a tint of how they would respond.
Correct. And that's the situations that we're talking about, and what happened in Cincinnati, what happened in Indiana, what happened with all these police shootings. There was the North Charlotte, South Carolina police shooting where the guy, got out of his vehicle. They tried to tase him. He was shot in the back, and they planted evidence on him. That's very specific situations, and that may have very been the point. I bet if we dug a little further than that, there would have been an excessive force complaint lodged against that officer. Possibly if someone was killed. Possibly you see one of these scenarios where they're charged with murder.
Yeah.
So, again, it's going back to we've been saying, in the segment, it's all about context. What context are we talking about these individual situations, not generalizing, that all police are bad, that everyone should, like the person said, kiss butt and be, bullied. And so that's a specific situation that they encountered. And so that's what your listeners need to understand is every situation's different. And we can't overgeneralize, especially when you're talking about very sensitive issues involving race, the police, and how we interact with, the police and the citizens interact with each other.
Yeah, and any of us could run into a great cop or an over-aggressive cop or somebody who doesn't have my best interest in hand. You can run into any kind of person. Just like I can run into anybody if I'm renting a car. I can run into a great rental agent, or I can run into somebody with not as good customer service.
But there's a lesson here overall that everybody needs to understand is to remain calm and to kind of respect the person with authority at the moment.
Somebody said if I get pulled over, the first question I ask is, if I've ever been arrested. Why are they asking all of that? I don't know. I just answer it.
If they've run your...
just like I told you, apparently me answering stuff makes me crazy because somebody just said, right, Orlando, and you over here making jokes and acting like you ain't a black man. If you weren't as prosperous as you are, you would not have this BS attitude that you have.
Okay.
I don't think it's about being prosperous. I think if you're a poor man and still are articulating your point well, if an officer has the right mentality, like if he's a real officer, I think he's gonna appreciate that. If you're like, yes, I ain't gotta be like, you're rich. If you're like, yes, officer, here's my license and registration. Did I do anything wrong? Like, if you're just having a normal conversation with them, I think they would appreciate that better, and it might go well, at least from what I've dealt with.
Appreciate that.
And the survey that came out just overnight, it was the Associated Press survey, very disturbing numbers inside of that as far as the distrust between African Americans and the police, and how the numbers are literally upside down between Caucasians who trust the police and think that 60% of them say that the police are doing right. 75%, 50 to 75% of African Americans say they don't trust the police in any situation. So how do we write those numbers is the ultimate question to ask. And, when we're talking, people are personalizing it towards you or personalizing towards, the police. There's a bigger problem here that if you have that big of a segment of the population on both sides of the aisle that have those deep-seated opinions, where is the middle ground?
Yeah, it's totally divisive. Like, it's like, wow, it's like a big span in the middle of people saying, I'm really angry at him. Well, I'm not. And it just seems to be that the white folks are like, hey, I have no problems. And black folks are like mad.
And then Trayvon Martin, we went, how long did we spend talking about that case and all the different segments we did on that? And that came down to a very simple, issue. Did George Zimmerman, shoot and kill Trayvon Martin? Was he justified?
Right.
And everyone was divided down the middle about it. From a purely legal standpoint, when you looked at the evidence and you looked at what George Zimmerman did, he should have been found guilty of second-degree murder.
Right. Plain
and simple. And people have opinions on that on both sides. And, is it divided on race versus are you legally and analytically looking at these situations, from a perspective? That's why I do this homework when I do these segments and send it all to you guys, because it's a matter of reading. Same thing with going down to Ferguson. Everyone had their opinions on Ferguson. Well, guess what? There is a Department of Justice investigation that is out there online. You can go pull it. Issued March 4th, 2015. Explains exactly why they found no wrongdoing on Officer Wilson's part. The Ferguson Police Department was blasted by the department because of their pattern of racism. But in this one incident, it's about 100 pages long, and I'm waving it around in front of all of you so
Right.
You read the whole thing, and it's very telling about what people said. It wasn't just one or two people on the media, one or two people on going on CNN every night and saying this is what happened. It was completely refuted.
Yeah.
And so people need to take the time to read, not just listen to people that are on air or talking heads.
Or read a headline.
Somebody just hit on the Hungry Howie's Pizza text line and said the law is just too gray.
Oh, I swear I was going to say that.
It just seems like it's not black or white. It seems like there's too much gray area in the law.
But that's the way the Constitution was written. 230, 40 years ago, however long it's been. When you go to law school, one of the things they teach you about the Constitution, it is a fluid document. It was meant to evolve over time, just like laws evolve over time, just like case law evolves about DUIs, about traffic stops, Davi's point about the canine searches, all of these things that there are gray areas, but then inside of those gray areas are specific instances that happen to specific people and specific court cases that occur. And that's why there is, this body of law. There's statutes, but then you have to look at the case law around it and to interpret it and the way it all shakes out. So it is a gray area, and that's why we have to have these conversations and explore all the different options and all the different types of scenarios that we as people encounter in our everyday lives.
Well, here's what we'll do. We'll take a break here, and we got the workday kickoff that starts. We still got stuff to do, but I want to make sure we get some more calls on. So we'll take this break and reset here and let everybody get some water and breathe for a second, and then we'll take some of your calls. And just to make sure that we get some more folks with the answers that they need, because we want to make sure everybody's educated this morning. It's your free show.
When you've been around
Quest and your chance at getting in our Tampa Bay talent search is coming up for you. But we wanted to close out with some calls, 888-429-0941, or text that come in so we could wrap up with Felix, because he's been nice enough to come in here and be our legal analyst this morning and kind of put some perspective on it, just because of kind of the this all came from an argument that we were just having in the room on basically what you can and can't do on a traffic stop, because we figured if we didn't know, then a lot of us people who are listening don't know, so we figured who better to talk to than our man. So Stephanie's on the line. Let's see what Stephanie has for us. Good morning, girl.
Good morning. How are you?
Pretty good. Now, what's your comment?
My comment is basically, I think everybody's trying to put more of the the outlook on the police. Like, the police are doing wrong. It's the police's fault whenever someone that's of African American is stopped. What no one seems to be realizing is that as an African American female, I would be lying if I said I don't fear for my 2 teenage boys who's also African American. However, the stigma is brought on by African American society. Not all African Americans are bad. However, majority of the population tends to want to put on this persona like, I'm ghetto, I'm gangster, I'm this, I'm that. And so we can't get upset when a police officer stops us and looks at it as like, okay, if something goes down, it's either you or I. Because I would like to go home to my family just like they would like to go home to their family if I was a police officer. So if you're putting on this persona that I'm big, I'm that, I'm ghetto, I'm gonna do this, I'm down with that, police officers are gonna feel threatened when they stop you. They're gonna be on their P's and Q's and be more cautious when they stop you. They're gonna shoot first and ask questions later.
I would hope they wouldn't. I would hope they wouldn't. But it's a much better chance of us not having any missteps like that if we can just talk as opposed to arguing and stuff.
Right. But what I can tell you is I'm a former police officer, and I can tell you that when I used to perform traffic stops, I even had that stigma against my own culture. So that's what I'm telling you. I'm speaking from experience. Like, if I walked up to a car and people were like, say, not so much smoking weed, but were, rowdy music coming out, tattoos on their face, I was more of a piece on my P's and Q's because I want to go home to my 2 sons.
Right.
So if I'm thinking that, other police officers are thinking that, what we need to do to change it is society as a whole, I'm talking black society, needs to step up. A few of us cannot change the negative stigma that we have. It takes all of us. And if majority of the population is going to still live their lives by that culture, because you can go through any neighborhood and you see them outside smoking, drinking, not want to work, act crazy, fighting in the streets, whatever, police officers are going to react that way. I'm not saying it's right for them to react that way, but they're looking out for their best interest as well, as if you were stepping into a bad situation.
Well, also I will say, while I understand everything you're saying, but there's an onus on the officers to protect and serve as well. So I do appreciate what you're saying, but I do. They are. That they are worried about themselves to get home, and that's their primary concern.
Yeah.
But they also have the job of protecting and serving, so that's the balance act that they're supposed to be doing
and
every day.
And that's coming from a cop.
Yeah.
She was a police officer, so that was a pretty powerful statement.
Yeah,
I'm happy she called in.
Excellent perspective. What we were talking about earlier is that this needs to have, I'm looking at some of the comments people were making about, what your opinion is, and do you represent, the African-American culture? But I think her perspective hits the nail on the head. This is the conversations that need to be had. Right. And people need to, sit down and listen to each other. And that's why there are crime prevention conferences that are focused on the black community. I just went to one a couple of months ago, and that was the focus of, like, not only, is what are the problems with the police, but it was largely law enforcement that was present. And how do we correct problems in the community? How do we get along with the community better? Community policing needs to be more of an effort. The body cameras, like we were talking about on Periscope a little while ago, these are all different mechanisms. But
body cameras, police walking beats, so they could be a little bit more personable to the neighborhood, all that.
One of the most frustrating things, as a citizen, that I see repeatedly, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like these officers will get in a shooting that's being investigated, but then they get paid leave. Like when everybody saw what happened, it's like it almost feels like a paid vacation. That is just almost infuriating, I would say.
Right, but from that perspective, it's also an investigation that needs to occur. And again, and this goes back to Ferguson. What everyone said they saw ended up not being completely true. So if you were in a situation where you were accused of a shooting and they didn't arrest you right away, you want the investigation, to be open and be able to, go to your job or whatever the case may be. So there are due process rights inside the departments that are investigating as well, and procedure they need. And that's, again, a department by department, police officer by police officer situation. And again, it's something you can't overly generalize. I, understand your position, but there's always more layers to the story.
Let's take two more calls here. Nick's on the line. Nick, what question you got for Felix, real quick?
Oh, what's going on, guys?
Hey,
well, I got into a traffic stop not too long ago, and when he was at my window, when he was walking up to my window, My passenger made an assertive movement, and he said he had the right to search that area of the car, not the entire car, but just that area of the vehicle.
And again, without giving legal advice, which is what I'm not here to do.
Not legal advice.
But, that's a situation where that's an issue that if he, is searched or the passenger ultimately ended up getting arrested, that's something that they would have to deal with, in court. And it all depends on, what their perspective was, what they saw. And again, like Davi keeps saying, this is one of those gray areas, what right to the police have
more
to search.
damn gray, dude. It's like somebody just wrote in, it seems that you should just let them violate you and then be exonerated in court.
Yeah.
Like, let whatever's gonna happen, and then if it's wrong, figure it out in court. Like you have no rights. It's like, because like what he just said is like, okay, the person in the car made a movement that they discerned was assertive, so they feel they should be able to test that car. Is that right? And it's like, well, it's like it should be a yes or no. That's what wigs people out. Like you know, I mean, you went to school for like 8 years to be a lawyer or something like that.
Right.
It's like they should have told you in one of them books.
No, because like when I'm reading a police report, I'm reading a criminal report affidavit, and this is either as a prosecutor or even as a journalist reporting on these issues.
Mm-hmm.
You look at it and it's like, that's really doesn't sound too good. But then I have to think about it. It's like, what was the circumstances? What did the
So
officer
that's when
do?
your investigation starts.
Right. And so we look at it and, that's before we even file cases. It goes back to the arrest report comes in.
So that's how you decide if you're going to bring the case to a charge after you see what happened, read into it, interpret,
right,
and then investigate.
If you see a search and seizure issue in a police report or a criminal report affidavit, you probably should not be filing that charge.
Yeah, okay.
And that's the thing. There is a check and balance that comes after the arrest. It's not just automatic, charging, of the case and you go to court and you get exonerated. Hopefully there's a process to it. And that's the layers that need to come off of all this, the gray area, so to speak, so that people understand all this.
All right, Felix Vega is in here with us. It's Felix Vega News on Twitter. Richard got the last call for us at 888-429-0941. Richard, what's up?
Hey, how you doing?
What's up? What's your question for Felix?
It's actually two questions just from two separate situations. The first one is when a police officer pulls you over, sometimes they ask you these asinine questions. And then one question that's been asked to me multiple times is, whose car are you driving and where are you going? Well, if you ask me for my license and registration and you ran my tag, you know this is my car. Why would you ask me that again?
It's a good question.
It's a good question.
Good question.
I mean,
It doesn't make any sense if they just looked it up.
Does the cop need to answer me if I'm asking him? Because that sounds like a damn good question right there.
It is a good question. Again, depends on.
Like, I gave you my registration. You see it's my car. Why are you asking me that?
Yeah, that's
like,
silly.
you got sass, boy? Get out the car. Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
That's why I ain't saying nothing. That's why I ain't saying nothing.
Richard,
all right, what was your other question, Richard?
The other question is, it was actually more of a situation. I was pulled over once, and...
But you get pulled over a lot, huh? Where you driving?
Oh, well, two cars. I got a 500 and a Bubble Chevy. If you're from Florida, you know what a Bubble is.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, when I got pulled over in my Chevy, I took my fitted cap off, where I'm kind of low. So when I took my cap off and the guy says, I give one guy my license and registration, he asked me, well, why did you take your hat off? I said, well, I took my hat off so when you look at my license, you can see my face. And the guy goes off and he says, well, that's not what it's telling me. What it's telling me is you're getting ready to go to war with the cops from removing the hat. From that, I was on the side of the road for an hour.
See that? Yeah. See, I mean, that's where
different situations.
If you like my dad said that you do what you got to do, take down their badge number, take down all the information, and you call me on your first phone call and let me fight the fight. But that don't sound right there. I don't want to be sitting on the side for an hour just because I took my hat off. Let me take my ID picture with my hat then or whatever. I mean, how can we fix that?
Sounds aggressive.
That just sounds a little bit crazy. You need to start driving a better neighborhood. They keep stopping you and messing with you, Richard. That seems strange. I mean, just you hear these stories all the time, and it's one isolated incident. Correct. It's not all incidents, but there are a lot of people who have those, and that's why they got that disdain. Like like Davi said, Davi's still angry.
I'm still mad.
Richard bad. Richard, like, damn, they made him spend an hour of his day. I'd have been mad too.
Yeah.
But
it's because of the profiling of the cars. I don't really understand that. I mean, the police officer who called in earlier, she was saying, well, if if we as black people continue to do things of this nature, things of that nature. Well, me personally, I don't have a record, but I like certain styles of cars. It was because of the type of way that I wish to fix my car, or drive it. It's subjecting me to getting pulled over.
Well, it's not fair to you in the same way. It goes both ways, and that's one thing we can. And matter of fact, since we ended it, it's one way we can learn from that. It's the same way. Like what she said, everybody can't be painted with the brush of the people who are the problem. Every cop can't be painted with the brush from the cops who are the problem. But the thing is, everybody on one side is saying everybody on the other side is like this, and the cops are saying, well, all of y'all who driving them Bubba Chevys are like that. You know what I mean? And it's like profiling on both sides, which none of it equals, any good conversation.
But any car can do that.
Any healthy conversation.
Statistically, if you buy a red car, you'll get pulled over more. I mean, you just have to know that ahead of time.
A red car?
Yes, statistically, for any red car, because I was just trying
that
to
might
buy
have been
a
back
car.
when they was racing on Route 66 or something. I mean, I don't think it really counted about colors.
It's true. You can look it up. It's an absolute fact. If you buy a red car, statistically, you will get pulled over more.
I don't
But that's just for a red car.
I don't want to get pulled over anytime.
Of
How about
course
that?
not.
And if I do, then I want to just make sure I get done fast. And I'm very, like I said, people think it's some power thing. I don't go wave a bank account in front of the officer. I'm just like trying to be nice.
Of course.
Because I don't feel I did anything wrong. And so maybe I ain't as tense. This other dude who was popping off had 4 pounds?
Yeah.
How many pounds?
2 to 4 pounds.
2 to 4 pounds of marijuana in the car, and he's sassing. I would be extra nice if I had 2 to 4 pounds of marijuana. Officers, I've never had 2 to 4 pounds of marijuana in the car, but I'm just saying I would be really nice if I did. All right, so Felix, at Felix Vega News on Twitter, you can always hit him up. I mean, we appreciate you coming in and going long too, because
always a pleasure, guys.
I know we got millions of calls that are still coming in, and this is going to continue going on Twitter. Davi still can't ride with me in the car. The Periscopers, I appreciate that. We got to play some music here, man. Felix, thanks for coming in.
Thanks,
dude.
guys. Always a pleasure.